Welcome to Dynasty Playbook. Your source for, I don't know, bullshit. We might talk about football. I haven't decided yet. But hey, 2 weeks in a row, we're back. There's some playoff football on. We're not watching because the Seahawks are getting the brakes beat off them. But let's hope we can get this in and get it done so Tyler can watch his Broncos lose.
Lose. I wish the Steelers were healthy. I know that sounds weird, but I wish they were at full strength. I don't want an asterisk victory today. I think we're going to get it one way or the other, but we'll see. Better than this Carolina-Seattle dumpster fire that's on.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from because if you're not beating them with Antonio Brown or any running back, you're not really beating the team that made it to the playoffs. You're beating, a shell of them that probably would have lost, and you'd have been playing the Jets instead. I can't believe how well the Jets did this year. That was startling.
It was bonkers, dude. There was a point, like, right before the playoffs started and the week before, we knew who had clinched, and the Jets were like 33-1 in Vegas, to win the Super Bowl. And I was like, it's not a bad bet. Mm-hmm. I put some money on that. That's a good football team. And they're going to be pretty good next year, too.
I'm surprised how much Gailey has turned that team around just right there. And, I like Gailey in Buffalo, but he's really done something special with that offense. But with that, we'll jump right into our actual show instead of just bullshitting like we tend to do. And let's start right off with our college player discussion for the week. And we're going to cover Michael Thomas. And not the one I like more, but the one from Ohio State. He's also pretty good. I hadn't really watched him at all. I hadn't watched much of Ohio State this year. And I don't know why. I just didn't get to watch a bunch of college ball this year. But I'm pleasantly surprised with what I saw. My absolute favorite part about his game is his footwork. He played against Kendall Fuller in the Virginia Tech game, and he was throwing him off his game just with his footwork. He wasn't torching him. He wasn't, out athleticing him, if that's a word. But he sells his routes. He just does really well, and it's fun to watch. His hands are super solid. I feel like he has a solid concept of the route tree. I like what I saw. I don't know how high I'm putting him just yet because I have to rewatch some of the guys from this class. But I'm thinking he's going to end up in my top 5 pretty comfortably.
I think that's about right. His footwork, you're talking about the footwork. It's that stop-go route that he runs, or just the stop. He just chops him real quick, and then the corner just can't really hang with him. He sells it one way or the other really well. So really crisp on those routes and really good tracking the ball going down the field as well. I thought he looked a little awkward. Drew and I were talking about this before we got on, and I was like, it's hard for me to explain, but it almost looks like he hadn't grown into his body or something. It's like he's just kind of clumsy almost sometimes, just limbs flailing all over the place, especially after the catch. Compared to a guy like Tyler Boyd, who's just silky smooth at all times, just looks like Mr. Natural. Thomas looks not quite as smooth, but I really like him too. I think he's probably going to settle in, middle first round rookie pick this year. I think that's about right. He's going to be solidly in that second tier of guys, which the second tier of guys is everyone except Laquan Treadwell. So,
if you're even going to do it like that, you got to at least put Zeke in there too.
No, you're right. Zeke and Treadwell, that's 101, 102. But yeah, I'm just trolling Drew a little bit here.
It's all about that Tyler Boyd life. But I will say, I didn't watch Ohio State this year, especially early in the season. But getting to watch this tape, I watched the Rutgers game, I watched the Virginia Tech game, early games of the season when Ohio was still number 1. And it was just so much fun getting to watch Zeke again. He's so, so good. But I'm also really surprised with how good Braxton Miller was as a receiver. Like, he's going to be, just watching him not even his tape, watching him on Thomas's tape, I'm like, this is going to be a guy I'm going to snag in the late rounds because the upside's there. I'm really interested to see what happens because I don't imagine he's going to go in as a QB, but maybe he will. I don't know.
Who knows? At some point, it doesn't really matter if you can get him on a flyer pick with that type of athleticism, that type of football IQ. It's a good pick to take. We're going to wash out most of our late, third round picks are going to be nothing. So why not take a run at a guy like Braxton Miller, who's got tremendous upside?
Yep. And with that, let's move on to our IDP spotlight for the week, and we're going to touch on a guy that we had all sorts of conversations and arguments about in the Voxer group this week, and that's Deion Buchanan. I'm pretty sure after one of Tyler's more interesting takes, I told him I hated him and that he was just an angry old man. But the whole reason it came up was I was looking at my linebacker rankings for this season on the off chance that Buchanan gets reclassified as a linebacker, and I didn't know that I couldn't put him in my top 12. I know that I just love his upside, and I didn't know that there was 12 guys I could put over him, and then Tyler proceeds to tell me that no, there's a lot of guys you can put over him, and he was just being the worst, because he is. And I mean, I feel like really, if we're going to touch on him, it'll be more on this linebacker side because I think Tyler and I are in lockstep on him as a defensive back, that Jones is the only guy you're taking over him, and it's not even that close. I mean, he's young and the talent is for real.
Absolutely. I mean, he's top 5 defensive back, no matter any way you slice it. If you want to put Harrison Smith, Burnett, those guys above him, cool. I can get down with that. But I just can't see any way you get him out of your top 5. There's just no way, especially as a defensive back that's a guy who's classified as a defensive back that you can play, in your safety spot that's playing linebacker. Because make no bones about it, he was playing linebacker all season in the box constantly. So it's a wild card. It's like getting a third super flex on offense or something. You're able to flex another linebacker essentially, which just makes his value as a safety go even higher than what it would be if he was a deep safety. And even if he was a deep safety or an out-of-the-box safety, he'd still be a damn good player. As a linebacker, he's probably 15-ish for me, 15 to 20, I would think. I can come up with a handful of names I would put over him at linebacker, a ton of guys. But I think as far as draft-wise, let's just talk startup draft. It doesn't really matter. He's going to go in about the same range anyway. So that's about the time that the, second, third, fourth defensive backs are coming off the board, is right when you're out of your LB1s anyway. So right. He's just a solid player, man. I've got him on a ton of rosters and a ton of lineups. Love having him there because that tackle floor is there every single week.
Yeah, honestly, I think the only guys that I was super solid with putting ahead of him were, Kuechly, David, Telvin Smith, Wagner, and then Mosley, Ogletree, and Collins. And after that, it all got muddy for me. I'm like, and Shazier. And after that, I'm just like, I mean, I could see myself taking him over, Tyler brought up the Denver linebackers or Michael Kendricks. Bowman still probably belongs in there, but he's getting old, and we know how I feel about old people.
Yeah, see, I just don't roll the age near as much into my defensive players, especially linebackers. One, because they'll play a little bit longer at a higher level typically, and two, because they're easier to replace. I'm not as worried about year 2 or 3 down the road, like, whoa, crap, what if I haven't replaced Des Bryant by that point? There's always going to be IDP guys popping up, and they'll pop up for a year and go away, or they'll pop up and they'll stay there forever. So I just don't worry about replenishing that talent near as much as I do on the offensive side. So a guy like Bowman, top 5 linebacker for me. DeAndre Levy, top 7 or 8 linebacker for me. They've proven it over and over again.
Yeah, and see, with Bowman, I think, because Bowman's still He's about to turn 30, I think. So he's still
No, Bowman's about to turn like 28.
no way.
He played. I'm almost
Oh
positive he
no, he's
played at
about to turn
27 this year.
29. I think he's about to turn 29. I'm pretty sure he was 28 this season.
He's my best friend.
That's fair. I mean, do you remember watching him and Patrick Willis?
Oh my God, you couldn't do anything against those guys.
There's a reason that team was consistently in the NFC Championship, and it was not that offense.
Navarro Bowman turns 28 on May 28th this year.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and forget what I said about Navarro Bowman. Then.
Well, I mean, still though, I mean that's older.
That's older, but that's. I was thinking he's closer to 30, and he's had some brutal injuries, and I'm thinking that's going to shorten his lifespan a little bit.
It seems like in my mind's eye that he should be 30 years old. It seems like he's been around forever.
But he might just come out young.
I don't remember that far back. I don't even remember what I had for breakfast.
I had a Fiber One bar because I didn't get out of bed and I was lazy, and it was fantastic. But that's neither here nor there. But I feel like we've touched on Buchanan a good bit. Let's move on to our questions for a week because we got a ton of them. And thanks to everybody for sending them in. And our first question is from Brad227 on Reddit. And it also matches up with a question we got from Gecko998. And it's, what are we doing with Thomas Rawls? Holding, selling? If selling, what value do you put on him? And Gecko asked, just what are we doing with him for now and for the future? And I got into some fights with some of our friends this last week because I'm not the biggest Rawls fanboy. He did some impressive things when he was running this year, but I don't know what it is that's holding me back from being all about him for the future. Like Lynch at most has a year left in Seattle. He might not even have this year left, especially considering, how much his injuries are starting to catch up with him. But for whatever reason, I can't see myself spending a first-round pick on him. And part of it's because he's a running back, and there's not a lot of running backs I'm willing to really spend a first-round pick on. But if I can get a first for him, I'm selling. And I'm sure Pat's like hiring a hitman to take care of me. But that's where I'm sitting. And I please, feel free to berate me for this because it doesn't make sense. And I understand that, but it's just one of those things where I got to go with my gut on it.
Rawls is just, it's so tough here because they're two complete ends of the spectrum here. If he gets that job, if he performs like he did this year when he had run, he's a top 5 running back. He's still an undrafted free agent. There's still so many things going against him. I can't even say what I would do. I'll own him in a few spots. I think if I can get 106, 107 or better, I'm moving without hesitation. If I can get a first and some change, I'm moving. If I'm buying him, I might pay a late first for him. I just don't know. It's so weird. And a lot of it is because I'm stubborn and I stick with my initial read way too long. That's why Cody Latimer's stuck on a ton of my rosters and will be until the day he dies. Because, I really like Cody Latimer. I spent a high leverage pick on him. I'm going to keep him. Thomas Rawls, I'll go and get him off the waiver wire. He's just some schmo. And that's just the way my stupid brain works. Just like Allen Hurns. I got Allen Hurns off of the waiver wire in damn near every league last year. And I have 1 share left because I traded him as a throwing. So I'm like, he's a freaking free agent. I picked him up off the wire. You can have this guy. And now Allen Hurns is a legit top 25, 30 dyno wide receiver, if not higher. So as far as Rawls, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I looking at what the bottom of the first round looks like this year, and I'd probably hold him for the latest of first round picks, like the 10, 11, 12. I'd probably rather have Rawls, but I think when it gets a little higher than that is when it gets murky because I like the top-ish wide receivers from this class. But after Zeke and Henry, Booker's the only other guy where it would be, it's iffy. And, it depends on how high Booker goes. Um, it sucks how much this running back class just evaporated real quick. Losing Connor definitely sucked. Trying to think of who else was in this class that we were looking forward to.
And there's some depth there. There are some good
Right.
players there, but there's not anybody that I'm salivating over.
Right.
For me, outside of Zeke, that's the only one that that gives me the I gotta have that
Right.
reaction.
And the only reason Henry is still so high for me is because I know with whatever a team's gonna have to spend to get him, he's gonna get significant playing time, and that's one of those things that it's so good for a running back's value early on. But I'm less thrilled about Henry than I was last offseason too. But
yeah, it's tough to get around. I mean, he's 240 pounds, and he doesn't play like he's 240 pounds. He plays like a guy that thinks he's 190 pounds. He's not quick enough to do that. That's my biggest drawback to Derrick Henry is just lower your damn shoulder, dude. Just bring the pain to somebody, and he just very rarely did that this year.
Right, he's a bear that plays like he's a puppy.
God, he's freaking huge.
He is such a big dude. Did you see him standing next to Mark Ingram? He made Mark Ingram look like a little baby person.
He was like little Frodo standing next to him, man. Mark Ingram he looked like a munchkin.
Yeah.
And Derrick Henry is absolutely massive.
And it's not like Mark Ingram's a freaking tank, but standing next to him, he's like, maybe I should eat some more protein bars. But with that, we'll move on to our next question. Comes from Naked Avenger on Reddit. How do you see Moncrief progressing with Luck next year, especially considering Hilton's contract and Dorsett? For me, Hilton's contract really doesn't have any effect on it. Hilton got re-signed this offseason, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. And Dorsett he's going to continue to develop, and he's going to be, that deep threat option, which we said he was going to be from pretty early on. I still like his talent, but especially with Hilton staying there, his ceiling is capped for me. But for Moncrief, you saw it this year when he was playing with Luck. He's quickly become Luck's number one target over Hilton, which was huge for me as a Moncrief fan because we expected that to only happen if Hilton left. But the only reason Moncrief tailed off at the end of the season was because Luck wasn't playing. Hasselbeck didn't have that same connection with him. Luck wasn't avoiding him. Luck was all about throwing to some Moncrief, and that's why he's going to be a top 15 wide receiver for me. Close to that this offseason. Because if he's got Luck targeting him all season, he's going to finish as a wide receiver one probably.
There were a number of positive indicators when they went to the one wide receiver set. Moncrief was the number one wide receiver. And I remember week one, what Moncrief get like 4 red zone targets. I mean, there's a lot of good things to take away. And he's just a baby. He's 22 years old. I mean, he's just now, getting in his man body. I brought that up earlier, but he's just now coming into that. So is he a top 15, 20 wide receiver for me? Yes, but my expectations are tempered with him. I'm not sure that we're ever going to see consistent wide receiver one seasons from him. I just don't know that he's that complete outside wide receiver that's going to gobble up 90 catches. But he's still a damn good dyno asset, and the age is the driving factor there. There are a number of guys that I think are better wide receivers that are 29, 30 years old that I don't want on my dyno team, especially in a startup scenario. So that's what's going to keep Moncrief high in that range for me. I'm not sure what we're going to see out of him. I think, old Colston type numbers, which are great. I'd love to have them. 75, 80 catches, 1,000 yards, handful of touchdowns. I'm good with that.
I think his upside is significantly higher than old Colston, and you're not going to find many people that are more Colston fans than I am, but he was not that useful of a fantasy target. He was a good guy to have on the bottom of your wide receiver depth chart. He was solid to plug in for some guaranteed points every week, but I disagree that Moncrief can't be, that consistent wide receiver one. If you look at even how much he's progressed as a wide receiver from Ole Miss to his rookie year to this year, the progression has been consistent, and really it's been a lot of change, and I don't know that that's going to stop anytime soon. He's going to keep getting better, I think. And he's shown he can do a lot with his targets. So even if he's only getting 70 catches, they might. I'm not saying he's Des Bryant, but Des Bryant doesn't get 100 receptions a season, and he's still getting 1,400 yards.
So I'm all about it. I'm all about it. To be clear, I love Dante Moncrief. I've loved him from the word go. He's nowhere near. And I don't even want to use the top tier guys. He's nowhere near Sammy Watkins, Alshon Jeffrey, those guys for me. He's a full step off of those guys, but he's also light years ahead of Manny Sanders. The guys in that next tier that would go, or a similar tier for me.
I totally agree with you there. He's definitely not in that same tier as those top guys. And there is a significant drop-off to that next tier. But the drop-off from the tier that Moncrief is in to the guys after that is even farther for me.
Yeah, it's non-existent.
Yeah, the guys in the tier with Moncrief are Bryant and I don't even know who else I'd have to think about it, but that's a really small, weird tier for me because it's guys that aren't going to push to be a top 5 wide receiver, especially anytime soon. But you're like, I can't just leave them off my rankings. Like they are extremely talented. They're very good, and it needs to be recognized. But Kevin White's another guy I would put in that tier, and
Kevin White, DGB. There's a number of guys right there, and those are the guys you got to have them. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs a wide receiver 3. I say wide receiver 3, not meaning he's in my 24 to 36. I'm saying that if my third wide receiver is ranked 36th overall, something went wrong. Right. Saying on my team, Moncrief, if he's my wide receiver 3, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, like if Nelson Aguilar had any sort of decent season this year, he would have been in that tier for me. Jordan Matthews is right on that line between that tier. He's in that tier for me. He had a disappointing season, even though it scored pretty well. There was a lot of letdowns with it, so I can't have him in that top tier.
College J-Matter. Jesus. How many more yards and touchdowns could he have had if he had just caught the damn ball? It would have been a crazy season.
He still scored as I think he was like the wide receiver 17, and he had at least that many drops.
That's nuts.
Maybe he'll get a good quarterback. Maybe Sam Bradford will go away. Philly will have a decent draft pick. Maybe they'll pick up a good quarterback. Probably not, because Philly fans aren't allowed to be happy. Chip Kelly was supposed to be their Lord and Savior, and they bring him in, and he's like, "You want some chaos? Because I got chaos. I'll come fuck all your shit up. I can do that." And he's just smiling that whole time, like almost like he knows what he's doing, but he's like, "This is gonna be funny." But the reason I brought up Kevin White is the second part of his question is, what's our view on Kevin White? And Tyler and I talked about this a little bit before we came on. And, at a few points in the last offseason, I had Kevin White as my number 1 wide receiver over Amari Cooper. And I think towards the end of the offseason, I was finally consistently on the Cooper's really, really good train. Not that I ever wasn't. Like, I loved Cooper from day one, but Kevin White's upside is like number 1 overall. But I don't know how we completely missed out on the fact that he's an old man already. With as much time as we spent talking about him last offseason, it never came up. We never noticed it. So that's a little bit of a knock, but he's got that wide receiver one upside. And if Alshon Jeffrey leaves Chicago, which God forbid that happen, if he's the only guy in Chicago, he's gonna wreck house. And I'm gonna be all about it because every place I don't already own him and that Tyler doesn't already own him, I'm gonna be buying him because he's gonna be cheaper than what I'd be willing to pay for him.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin White was the 103 last year. If we redrafted today, he's still my 103. I still think that's the right play. Athletic freak. I mean, his numbers last year at West Virginia were nuts. And they were crazy. And granted, he's got a very small sample size at the Division I level, but he produced prior to going to that as well. So I'm all over Kevin White. I've got him in a ton of spots. I'd like to get him in more. And I'd be willing to pay a pretty choice price for him. I feel like I'd pay the 103 right now, like this year's 103 for the 2016 draft class. I think I'd pay it for Kevin White today.
I would too.
In fact, I know I would.
I would too, but that's because I have White over Treadwell and you have White over Boyd. But I mean, that's a personal difference thing. But I agree. I mean, he's still that high. I remember when Diggs broke out and he was just killing it for like 3 or 4 weeks straight, and everybody's talking about how high in a 2015 redraft would you have taken him? And I'm thinking I could see myself going as high as the 104, but I can't see myself taking him over Kevin White. And there's a bunch of people that were even pushing him to the 103, and nobody loved Diggs more than we did. I mean, you can find proof of that. No one had him ranked higher than we did. I'm still not putting him over Kevin White, even though he broke out, even though he showed what he did as a rookie when we didn't expect him to do that. But Kevin White is still that good of a wide receiver to where, I have no problem keeping him where I did. If we did a redraft today, it's still 103, and it's not even a question, especially that Aguilar had a bad season and he was our 104.
Whoops.
Yeah, I mean, you win some, you lose some.
There's still time there.
Absolutely.
Still time there. But jeez.
God.
If he just didn't play, I'd be okay. You know what I mean? I could live with that. That son of a bitch
He played so many snaps.
He played a lot. Oh my goodness. If we were Diggs fans, we were just as big of fans of Aguilar as we were of Diggs.
Well, I mean, I don't have a tattoo of Diggs' name on my ass, so I'm.
Man,
the love was for real.
Yeah,
and
it was.
I still don't know that it's misplaced, but oops. What are you gonna do? If we hit every time, we'd be getting paid a lot more than we are, which is nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, I think I made like $20 last year.
Yeah. And he had a couple more questions. He says, was it a terrible mistake that I traded Moncrief in a mid-second for Kevin White, and how long should I cry while sitting on the toilet? I wouldn't be crying at all. Like, I think the context of this was he did it before the season, or that he did it early on in the season, and I still don't hate it. We talked about, I don't think Moncrief has the same upside as Kevin White. But the biggest thing I see is Kevin White's value can skyrocket within the next year, whereas Moncrief, even with a really good season, is only going to bump up a couple of spots at most. He's going to bump up more from the fact that those top tier of wide receivers are going to be yet another year older. They're going to be, the Des Bryants and the Antonio Browns are going to be hitting that age 30 season, and it's going to start, being concerning. And Moncrief's going to move up from that more so than his own production, whereas Kevin White could jump them all this next year with his production.
Yeah, I don't hate that trade. I don't love it. I wouldn't be dancing through the streets about it, but if I made that same deal even today, I don't think I'd be too broke up about it. So, you paid a little bit. A second rounder is a little bit. That's not pocket change, but you paid a small price to get what you think is an upgrade. So go for it, man. That doesn't bother me a bit.
Yeah, like there's a lot of times I will look at trades I made the offseason before and think, oh my God, what was I thinking? This would not be one of those trades. I'd be like, my process was right at the time. It made sense. I still don't feel bad about it. It can still pay off for me. It's not some of those where it's like I traded, I turned down a 9th-round startup pick and my Eric Ebron for somebody's OBJ because the process wasn't even right there. I was just an idiot.
So many regrets.
Oh, God.
Trade regret is a pisser, man.
Oh, it's the worst.
And then I do like I used to do. I used to play poker, and I didn't make a living at it, but I made decent money playing, online poker. So I would lose $50. Well, then I chase it. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, now I got to get 50 back and then some. Next thing you know, I burnt through $300. I do the same thing with trades. I make a shitty trade, and I'm like, oh my God, I broke my team. Now I got to scramble. And then I dig a deeper hole, and I make it even worse by making more and, progressively aggressive trades. So a deal like that, don't even sweat it. You'll know when you fucked up.
Yeah.
It'll keep you up at night.
Oh, God, that luck trade.
Dude, I've made trades worse than that today. I am the worst, man. Trade regret sucks, and I have so much of it. So much. And it's always, every single time, it's when I pay up for a stud. Every time I regret, it's when I pay up. I'm done paying up.
Yep. He also wants to know if you were to start up a salary cap league, non-auction draft PPR, how would you go about it? I wouldn't. Salary cap is not my thing. I tried it before and I was just really not into it. It didn't do anything for me. I feel like it made trading more difficult. And I really don't like what it did to player evaluations and they're not their evals, but their valuation, because it became so much about their salary and not about who they were as a player. And I wasn't about it. And I know you feel the same way. Numbers is hard.
Math be hard. I just don't dig it.
All right. So our next question comes from username02. He said, based purely on the player's name and nothing else, who would you draft 101? And he says, I think it boils down to Leonte Carew or Scooby Wright. And also both Michael Thomases would have to fall in the rankings because they cannibalize each other's names, given that they have the same name. And I think Scooby Wright's got to be the 101 here. I mean, how much of their family hate that kid that you look like a Scooby? They're saying you look like a dog or...
Yeah, absolutely. Scooby Wright. I mean, love that name. That just sounds like, my buddy Scooby. Me and my buddy Scooby back in high school, we used to do some dumb shit. Yeah, I'm taking Scooby Wright easy. That, and I think he's a pretty decent football player, too.
I was about to say the same thing. I'm taking him regardless of his name. His name could be Joe Ryan. I try to think of the most generic whatever name I could. But I like him. I like him a lot. I think he's, besides Jack, he might have the highest upside out of any linebacker in this class. Next one comes from Cold Revenge Disc. Proud gambler on David Johnson with the 11th pick in my Dynasty draft last summer. Where do you think his value moves to by next summer? Actually, we have a perfect example. A bunch of our buddies from the FF Couch Coach crew, and quick shout out to them. They are sponsoring our podcast. They're hosting it on their website. I'm supposed to give a shout out to them when we start.
We're so bad about that. We're so bad.
Sorry,
Coach.
We completely forgot to do it at all last week. We hung up and we're like, oops, my bad. But they're doing a startup draft right now, and David Johnson went in the first round of their startup draft. I love David Johnson. I'm all about David Johnson. That is too high. That is way too high. I think bottom of the second is borderline too high. But that's where, the third and fourth running backs are going to be going. So I get it. And I'm down with that. I'm not going to be taking him there because you're almost buying it what his ceiling is. And I'm okay with buying it at a player's ceiling price, but not for running backs. Things can go wrong so quickly that it's just not the right call. I was all about investing in Lamar Miller when he was like a 9th round startup pick in 2014, but now that people are taking him as a top 5 running back, I'm not about it. I just in one of my leagues today, somebody traded T.Y. Hilton for Lamar Miller, and even though T.Y. is the number 2 there now for me, it's still not a deal I would do.
See, I thought that when I saw that email for that trade, I thought that was about as fair as it gets. But Drew got the short and sweet. What's David Johnson's value going to be? Too damn high. Period. Love him. We loved him. We loved him from the first time we turned on the tape. Drew and I both drafted him all over the place. Startups, rookie drafts, traded for him, whatever. I'm out. I won't be getting any new shares. I can't see myself trading for him because it's going to cost too much. Can't see myself drafting him in what few startups we might do. It's gone. He shot the moon. David Johnson effectively jumped the shark for us. So if your name's not Le'Veon Bell or Todd Gurley and you're considered a top-tier running back, probably ain't going to it's just probably not going to happen for me. Too much talent at wide receiver. Been proven over and over and over. Wide receiver is king. You can win with garbage at running back. Period.
Sure can. I will say, though, in the places I do own him, I'm not rushing to trade him. I'm not rushing to capitalize on this value because I think he's still going to produce. I've got teams where he's my RB2, and I'm still all about it,
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I'm not looking to ship him off, even if I'm getting close to what his startup draft price is.
Yeah. I mean, within the context of the team on which he's already on your roster, why? Unless you're just getting a massive haul for him, there's no real reason to go crazy. So I think he's a top 5 dyno running back. I think he's right there. It's hard to come up with 5 names that I like better. So I'm not disagreeing with this valuation. I'm just saying it's too high for me, too rich for my blood for a running back.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's that the other 3 in that top 5 for me is Hyde, Yeldon, David Johnson. We talked about it before, and depending on how I feel any certain day, it can go in any order. So but I'm still not paying that for any of them. If I'm paying for them, it's the 3. If I pay him for the 5, the 5 can fall. If he's dropping to the end of the 3rd, I can see myself jumping on that because that's where wide receiver starts drying up real quick too. So why not grab one of those top tier running backs? But with that, we'll move on to our next question from our buddy at FF Thor Mikey, who, if you guys aren't following Thor, you're doing it wrong. He's a blast to talk to. Do you guys have any advice for co-owning a dynasty? Brand new to co-owning, any advice for startups and just regular and off-season co-owning tips? Well, we happen to have some experience co-owning a team, a terrible, awful team that we took over. It's not going to be terrible in the future, but it was terrible this year. To me, the most important thing, bar none, in co-owning a team is that you and your co-owner have a similar vision for what a successful dynasty team looks like and for player valuations. Granted, no 2 people are going to just be completely on lockstep with every player. Tyler and I are probably the closest to anyone of just consistently, hey, we think the same thing about this guy, think the same thing about this guy. But there are still players we differ wildly on. Treadwell Boyd is a perfect example of that. That to me is so important because if you're just bickering, you're going to stall your team. You're not going to improve it ever. And it's going to wither away. It's either going to be a middle of the pack team or you're going to consistently get high draft picks and waste them away essentially.
Yeah. Sharon, not exactly the same philosophy, but a similar dynasty philosophy is numero uno. That's the most important thing. When it's time to put those draft picks in, you got to be on the same page. When it's time to make trade offers, you got to be on the same page. Communication's another thing. You've got to communicate. And communicating through email that's probably not the best way to do it. You need to be able to get a hold of one another quickly, to make the right moves. Because especially, you're talking about how much of our blind bidding money do we spend on player X, things of that nature. Setting the lineup's easy. That's not hard. The main thing is it needs to be a friend too. It's got to be a buddy. You don't just want to, partner up with just some dude that you kind of know. It's not gonna last. It's destined for failure. So, like I said, the biggest thing is sharing a similar philosophy. And like Drew and I, we went into a dispersal draft in that one that we did. We took over an orphan, but there was a 2-team dispersal, and we had a clear path. We went young, and there were a bunch of draft picks involved, and we scooped draft picks at almost every chance we got. We got what we wanted over players. There were certain players in that dispersal that were good players. We just faded them for one reason or another. Who were some of those guys in there?
I couldn't remember. The only one I still remember us passing on is Martavis Bryant. We passed on him for probably a late first or an early second.
I think like 111 or 201 or something, and that was stupid.
Right. Yeah, we shouldn't have done that.
But we're insane.
Yeah. Actually, I talked about it with Tim Slimbo, for those of you guys on Twitter, because he was starting a dispersal draft, and he said, what's advice you would give for someone who's never done it? And the first thing I thought was, grab draft picks, because your team's not going to be good this year. There's no way you're coming out of the dispersal draft with a team that's ready to compete. So I'm getting the absolute youngest players I can, and that's draft picks. They're inherently young, and they're not going to lose value between now and when you draft, now in the future. They're only going to appreciate in value. It's the easiest way to quickly improve your team. If you take guys that even are high upside, there's still a much bigger gamble with them than there is with draft picks. So that kind of went off topic, but it's it still pertained to what we were talking about.
Yeah, just have a clear plan and communicate. Especially if you're doing a startup. My God, woo! Drew and I, we would, even though we are of a very similar mind, we would argue over some picks, especially in an IDP startup. I can't even.
I just had the same thought.
It would go nuts.
Oh no. The one other thing I would say is super important is you have to be willing to compromise, because like I said, you're not always going to agree on everybody, and once in a while you're going to have to let go. You're going to have to say, all right, I made the call on the last guy. It's do what you think we need to do. And you can't hold it against them when the thing you wanted to do turned out to be the better option. We didn't pick up Thomas Rawls in free agency, and that would have been huge for us. And we might have actually both passed on that.
No, we picked up Rawls, but we didn't pick up Cargoat. I think we have Rawls, but we didn't get Cargoat.
That's what it was. Carlos.
And granted, Carlos Williams is probably a nobody, but
that
we slept.
If it had been up to you, we would have picked up Carlos Williams, whereas I was sleeping on him a lot more. So that's a perfect example of it.
Well, and Rawls the other way, you probably, hey, let's go pick up Rawls, and I've just been like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Let's go hit up Brady's question at B_hug with 2 G's. Are gummy candies even digestible? I often worry that I have a gut full of gummies. I don't have an answer for you, but I will tell you they probably are digestible, because if they weren't, I'd have died by now. I don't know how many pound bags of Sour Patch Kids I've eaten, but it's enough to where if they didn't digest, they'd be coming out of my throat and my nose right now.
I would look like Jabba the Hutt. My diet is like 50% gummy candy, to just be perfectly honest. Sour Patch, gummy worms, and fade the chewy sweet tarts, man. I was so excited when I saw them. They're just not that good.
No.
Or the gummy sweet tarts. What a bummer.
The loaded sour, not Starburst, but I can't remember. Screw it. They're super good. They're gummy. They're fantastic. They got a little juice on the inside.
Oh, their Sour Patch with the little.
That's
Have you
right.
seen that? Oh my God.
Yeah. And then you got the have you had the little sour trolley eggs?
I have not.
They're fantastic. You need to get on that.
I do eat the trolley, the like the little apple O's and the peach O's. I love those things.
I put down some of their gummy worms. Their sour gummy worms especially. And I bitched about it in the Vox group the other day, but my wife and I just decided to split one of these bags. And she got to eat her half first because I was cleaning dishes or whatever. And I get back, she ate all the fucking blue gummy worms. How shiesty is that? Like I almost left. I almost left the house. I couldn't handle it.
Hey, snooze, you lose, man.
Yeah, no. And she was just laughing her ass off. She was so proud of herself.
She's a keeper. That's how you know you got to keep her.
What's your position on Swedish fish?
I don't love them, but I'll certainly eat them. I don't hate them. I don't love them. They're okay for me. How about the little cinnamon bears? You know what I'm talking about? The little gummy cinnamon bears. I haven't seen those in a long time. I don't know why. Somehow Swedish fish popped up some correlation in my head. But if you ever find those, get on them. They're amazing.
I didn't even know that was a thing, but I'm gonna have to keep my eye out. But let's move on to the next question. It comes from @Ryan Hanlon, which it fits what we're talking about. Is 2 pounds of strawberry Starburst a real thing? And I think it was Brady that sent us the link. Apparently, it really is. And it's all just one flavor, and strawberry is clearly the best flavor. I mean, we're not arguing about that. But you can go get cherry. Cherry's fantastic. I don't know if you've had the watermelon kind; they're pretty good too. Like you get my favorite is that they started doing the all red Starburst bags, and the fruit punch I can take or leave, but the rest are really good. I'm all about it. So yeah, 2 pound bag of strawberry Starburst. If it's not going to kill me, I'm at least going to try and see if it can.
No, why not? I mean, it's just like yesterday. I'm battling a nasty toothache, so let's go get some Starburst. What better for a wicked bad toothache than some Starburst? And now I can get only the good flavor, just a giant bag of only the good stuff. It's amazing. I think it was on Amazon. Mm-hmm. I got to get in there and see what's going on. It was multiple different candies too. I mean, like Tootsie Pops, and
I saw some crazy flavors of Tootsie Pops. Like,
all about it.
Like there was a watermelon Tootsie Pop.
I'm on it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm adventurous.
All right, now let's be serious and talk about football again. I know. Our next question comes from @DanPH99, and he wants us to discuss Martavis Bryant's value. And we hit on Bryant a good bit earlier, but I feel like we didn't really dig right into it. He's got to be close to Moncrief in that same conversation, just because it seems like every time he's on the field, he's producing. But my biggest issue is he's never going to surpass Brown. And Brown, to me, out of all of the elite wide receivers in the NFL that are older, Dez, Julio, AJ, Demarius, I feel like he's going to have the longest staying power after that age 30, 31 season. I feel like he has the best chance to defy the age curve. And I don't know what it is about him. I think part of it is that so much of his game is not based on speed, but it's based on, skill and his ability to manipulate players. But Martavis is going to be the number 2 there for quite some time. So I think that caps his ceiling. And that's the only reason I can't keep moving him up. If we were told tomorrow that Antonio Brown is retiring and Martavis is going to be the number 1, he's borderline top 12. But being that number 2 caps his ceiling for me. But if I'm paying rookie picks, 1-0, I don't think I could go lower than the 103. The only ones I would consistently take over him is the top 3 guys, maybe top 4, depending on how I feel about Doxson after the draft happens, where he goes.
Yeah, that's right where I'm at. And it took me a long time to come around on Martavis. And this goes back to the stubbornness. Martavis, Jarvis Landry, those guys in that awesome draft class that fell all the way out of the second round more often than not. So I valued them as such because I'm a stubborn asshole. So Martavis, love Martavis. He's great to have on your team because he's going to give you these massive boom weeks. He's going to give you some stinkers too, which we've talked about. I'm not a big fan. Nobody's a big fan of guys hanging donuts, but I like it even less. I value floor a little bit more than most and ceiling a little bit less than most. But Martavis is right up there. We're probably, third round startup pick. I could see him going earlier than that, depending on the guys you're drafting with. So, I mean, he is who he is. He's in that tier, like the Moncrief, Kevin White, DGB, Jordan Matthews, those guys. He's right in there. You want to rank him higher than all of them, go for it. You want to rank him at the back, that's fine too. But he's a legitimate dino asset.
You taking any of the top 5 running backs after Bell and Gurley over Bryant?
Probably not.
That's fair.
Just because that's how I get down. Give me Theo Riddick in the 12th. We'll patch running back together. We can patch it together. It's not difficult to do.
All right. And with that, our next question is going to come from @_Fomorians, who's always sending us great questions. He's one of the writers over at FF Couch Coach as well. Actually, Fomorians, Brady, Ryan Hanlon, and Thor are all writers for Couch Coach, and the crew there is excellent.
They really are, guys. They're the best. These are our buddies. The Couch Coach crew. The coach himself has assembled a great group of guys, man. And gals.
Yep. And with let's hit up his first question. And he asked Jack or Jalen for IDP. And for those of you who don't do IDP or haven't dug into this class, those are really the top 2 linebackers in this class. And I think Tyler and I are firmly in agreement here that it's Miles Jack by a good bit. This guy is just nuts. His landing spot alone could put him as a top 5 linebacker before he ever takes a snap in the NFL. A decent season is almost a lock for him to jump CJ Mosley for me. He's so much fun to watch. He's so good.
Yeah, he's that good. This is a transcendent type of talent here. This is think Sammy Watkins when he came out as a wide receiver. That's what Miles Jack is. I mean, my God, he played a lot of running back for UCLA and played it well. Like, you wouldn't ever think that's a linebacker back there, in the backfield. So he's that kind of athlete to be able to play running back in a Power 5 conference. It's nuts. So Miles Jack for me, and I beat that drum. Don't spend high leverage rookie picks on IDPs. This is the year that I might do it. And Miles Jack is the guy that I'm going to spend it on. And I've also said, buy your defensive end before you buy your linebacker. I'll take Jack over Bosa. And I love Bosa. Bosa is an animal. But I think Miles Jack, especially in the 2-point solo leagues, Miles Jack's that guy that can hover around 20 points per game every week for 8, 10, 12 years, which is really nice to have. There are just a handful of guys out there that can get you that. And Jalen Smith's fantastic. But if you watch the tape on Jalen Smith, it's almost like it's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. One play, he's amazing. And then the next play, he's getting swallowed up by a blocker. And he gets swallowed up a lot. Whereas Jack is so athletic, it's hard for blockers to even really get their hands on him. So I think they're both going to be great, great players. And Jalen's going to be a really nice buy this summer because he's probably redshirting next year because he wrecked his knee, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So Jalen's going to come at a really nice price, a la Dante Fowler last year. So,
yeah,
I'm all about both of them, but Miles Jack is a different level player, athlete, linebacker, whatever.
I'm still on the fence. I don't know if I'm taking Bosa over Jack, but it's close. Bosa is just another one of those talents that's just unbelievable. So it'll be interesting trying to work out what I'm going to do there. I think team construction is going to have a lot to do with what I end up deciding to do. But but we'll hit Fomori's next question. He says, how about an early top 5 rooks at every position? And I do mean every position, hashtag IDP. I'm going to be completely honest. I know Tyler and I are the same here. I'm just not as ready for this rookie class as I was last year. I'm super behind. Michael Thomas is a top 5 guy, and I just watched him for the first time this week. There's some depth guys I've watched, but most of my experience with these players have come from watching live games. As far as quarterback, I have an idea about these players. I know I'm going to have Goff number 1. I'll probably have Paxton Lynch number 2. But after that, it gets kind of gross. Wentz is in the top 5. I don't like Christian Hackenberg all that much. He's all right. He's probably in my top 5. Connor Cook's a dog turd wrapped in more
another dog turd.
Yeah. The fact that people were, toting him as like, potentially the number 1 quarterback out of this class is psychotic to me. But that doesn't help that out of all the positions, I hate evaluating quarterbacks, so I almost never do it. I'm just like, whatever the NFL tells me about quarterback is what I'm going to do. As for, well, actually, I'll let you hit on quarterback before we move on.
I mean, that's it. It's draft position. If Mariota had gone ahead of Jameis in the NFL draft, I'd have taken him over Jameis in a Superflex draft. He didn't, so I took Jameis first. I don't know anything about quarterbacks, so I'm going to let much, much smarter people make that decision for me. Running back, clearly it's Zeke at the top of the hill, and you can roll about halfway down the hill before you get to the next guy. You got Derrick Henry. Booker's a nice player. The Dixon kid out of Louisiana Tech, who I really didn't like him, when we watched tape earlier this summer, but a lot of people do like him. So, he's one I need to go back and watch. Paul Perkins, UCLA, really, really nice player. There's some depth players here. The kid at Indiana, Howard, I think is his name.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some nice players. I'm not near as far along as I was this time last year. Not even close. I feel like I am just barely scratching the surface of this class.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of guys that people are all about. Like I haven't even watched Paul Perkins yet. There's a running back out of Notre Dame I haven't watched yet. And these are like top 5 guys for people, and I haven't even watched them. For me, it goes Zeke, Henry, Booker, and then after that, it's going to go Alex Collins and then Kenneth Dixon. I like Collins a lot. I think he'll be interesting at the next level. But
you're a big Arkansas fan, right?
Let me tell you about all that Arkansas fandom. Motherfuckers.
They can run the damn football, though, can't they?
I'll tell you, I don't care what they can do with football. They're really good at ruining LSU's hopes and dreams lately.
It's the golden boot, man.
It doesn't help that they treat it like a rivalry game and we treat it like we're playing a high school team. Not good. Like we could have gone to an actual bowl game this year and not,
Yeah, go and beat the brakes off of Tech. But the only reason they did that is because A&M and the SEC ducked Tech. A&M didn't want to play Tech. The SEC didn't want A&M to play Tech. Nothing good could have come of it. So Tech gets to play the juggernaut running game of LSU. Just as an aside, that really irritated me.
Yeah,
really irritated me because Tech would have beat the shit out of A&M, and I'd have loved every second of it.
At wide receiver, this is going to be the only place where Tyler and I really differ, and it's because my number 1 is Boyd. Number 2, I guess, is Treadwell, and a lot of that's going to have to do with draft position as well as the fact that he's probably pretty good at playing wide receiver. After that, it's kind of a toss-up. I don't have a clear look at my 3 through 5. I like Michael Thomas. I like Doxson. I like the other Michael Thomas. I don't know that I'm putting him in top 5, but it's getting close for me. A lot of people like Corey Coleman. Corey Coleman can eat my shorts. He's not good. He's a peckerhead. So to hell with him. and it's a pretty big tier break after that. I mean, we still got guys like Pharaoh Cooper, Darunya Wilson in the class, and they're all good, but they're just not even close to that top 5.
Yeah, I mean, Carew is going to inch up there.
Yeah.
He had the straight line speed. Sterling Shepard, the kid out of Oklahoma, a lot of people really like him. Is Duke Williams going to show up somewhere on the radar?
Maybe. I feel like even if he does, I'm not touching him. I mean, he's a bigger dumbass than Josh Gordon and Justin Blackman hanging out together, and we see how well that's played out.
Hashtag character concern. What about Will Fuller, the deep threat? And then his name Will Fuller, the kid at Notre Dame.
Yeah,
it's like a Devin Smith kind of thing going on there.
Exactly, and we all know how I feel about Devin Smith. But yeah, I completely forgot Carew. You're right. Carew would be in my top 5. I was all about Carew when we watched him.
And there are going to be several guys pop up that I've never even heard of.
Yeah,
that's just how it goes.
I was looking forward to Doral coming out at LSU. He would have snuck in there potentially at the bottom of that top 5, or at least real close to there. But there's going to be some sneaky talent. I mean, Braxton Miller is going to be somewhere in there. He's sneaky good. As for tight end, it's Henry, and then I mean OJ Howard didn't come out, so it's really nobody after that. I think the other cat is the kid out of Stanford, who's apparently pretty good, but I haven't watched him. I don't know.
They all went back. Ingram went back. Bucky Hodges went back. OJ Howard went back. So next year's tight end class looking pretty good, I guess.
Yeah.
Just don't draft rookie tight ends. Just if you do, don't do it before like the 3rd round. Just don't.
Yeah, because I mean,
the heartache.
We can't say don't draft rookie tight ends because we were all about drafting Clive Walford last year
in the 3rd round.
Right. We paid an appropriate price. I think I got one share of Max Williams, and it's because he fell to the end of the 2nd. And I'm like, all right, fine.
Yeah.
Not because I wanted to, but because that's what was there. I assume you don't want top 5 fullbacks or offensive linemen. I mean, we could, but I feel like I don't want to be that guy. Actually, we couldn't. I couldn't name a single fullback.
Are there even fullbacks anymore? Do they even fullback?
I think they just pick fat running backs. I think that's how they do it now.
That sounds fair.
As for defensive end, I mean it's pretty clearly both at the top. It's not even a conversation. Mdichi from Ole Miss is going to be up there for me, whether he plays defensive end or DT. Who else? Allen out of Alabama, I like a lot.
Shaq Lawson, man.
Yeah.
I think Shaq Lawson's going to end up getting closer to Bosa. He's the only guy that could really even get there for me.
My concern with Lawson is that he's going to get linebacker designation.
Oh, he's big, dude.
He's
got that build. What about the Buckner kid, the massive kid from Oregon? This dude is huge. Oba, if that's how you say his name, Oba.
The cat at Oklahoma State.
Shalik Calhoun. Shalik Calhoun from Michigan State, who we're talking about like the guy that could run so hot and so cold. I mean, he's 2 totally different players depending on when you like him, when you watch him, but he's clearly talented. This is a really nice set of edge players.
Yeah, hopefully we don't lose them all to
linebacker.
Oh, dude,
I don't know, but with the new scoring that we've got going, it's kind of nice. You got play a guy like that, a rush backer, and nobody hates rush backers more than me. I promise. But with the scoring that we've been using in our particular leagues, it's not as much of a hindrance. Because 1 sack is a week. You know what I mean? You get 10 points off of a big impact play.
Yeah, no, I can totally get down with that, but it's more that defensive end is such a barren position that losing them to that is brutal.
It is brutal, yeah. I mean, I don't mean to undermine how huge that is because it is massive. massive, massive the difference in value to your roster, whether they're a D lineman or a outside linebacker. I'm saying this is a good year to have stockpiled multiple seconds and thirds and fourths in your IDP leagues. There's a ton of talent out there.
Yeah, at D line and linebacker. I mean, Miles Jack is fantastic. We talked about him already. Jalen Smith is excellent. I'm still, we talked about Scooby Wright. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's going to test pretty well at the combine. Reggie Ragland almost has to be in your top 5, but I don't want him to be.
No, he is.
And then at the end of that, I mean, I guess the Leonard guy out of Georgia, but a lot of people have him ranked so much higher than I do, and it makes me think I'm missing something. But I'm not all that interested in him.
The NFL draft clears a lot of this up for us because the real talent evaluators get in there and they tell you what's going on. I was disappointed to see Kendall Beckwith go back to school. I know Drew isn't because LSU is going to be pretty nasty next year. They're going to be a handful, and he's a hell of a player. I like Brothers from Missouri. I like him a ton. I don't know that I don't like him a little bit more than Ragland. Really nice athlete. So I'm stoked about this IDP class. The safeties are a lot of that's going to hinge on what is Jalen Ramsey. I think Jalen Ramsey's a safety. And if it goes down like that, he's going to be a nice pick. Cash, the kid from Duke, really like him. Not sure what's going to happen. Apparently, he's limited as an athlete. Jaron Curse at Clemson, the bonehead. But can be a really nice player. I mean, there's some good ones. The Von Bell kid at Ohio State, that dude will hit somebody. So there's a few guys in the defensive backfield as well.
Yeah. Besides Ramsey, I have looked at no one from this defensive back class. It's been farther down my list. And it kind of leads into Maureen's next question is who are the front running rooks, DTs / cornerbacks for those leagues that require them? And Tyler and I pretty much agreed that if for cornerback, it's not about talent. A lot of it has to do with situation. It has to do with, whether they're going to get targeted or not. And, if you're going to be the first drafted cornerback onto a team that has no cornerbacks, chances are you're not going to get targeted as much as some guy that was taken in the second or third round. So it becomes incredibly situationally dependent. And it's one of the few times I'm going to advocate going situation over talent. Because, I mean, look at Revis and look at, Sherman as IDP plays, and they're not the cornerbacks that you're like, I got to go get them. They're just like, sometimes they'll get interceptions. Cool.
Yeah.
And as for DT, I haven't watched any of them. The only guy is Mdici could get DT eligibility. If he does, that's a guy I'd be interested in. But other than that,
Yeah, these just aren't two positions that I really pay much attention to. In corner, I'm telling you, you could be in a 16-team league where you start 2 corners every week and you can still stream it. So that's what I do. I don't even carry corners through the offseason. If I had Marcus Peters on a roster, I'd drop him for a 12th wide receiver. There's just no value there because you just chase the targets. Look at the matchups. Like this year I streamed against Denver, San Diego, Pittsburgh. They were nice matchups for corners. Washington was a nice matchup for corners. I paid much more attention to that. It's similar to chasing targets from a wide receiver as it is to a corner. Defensive tackle, I don't know. I'm not going to go as far as say I stream it. I usually just find a guy that's playing 60, 70% of the snaps and pop him in. I've never been able to get the right guy like then Aaron Donald when the price was right, or Gerald McCoy when the price was right. So I'm usually rolling, Linville Joseph, Sharif Floyd, Tyrone Crawford, guys like that. As far as the draft class, I'm not in tune enough at all to be able to give any type of take on who's coming.
Yeah, and that's going to do it for our questions for the week. And to save Tyler from going on a rant, I'm going to skip my rant because the Denver game started 3 minutes ago. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. This has been the Dynasty Playbook. I'm your host, Drew. You can find me on Twitter at DrewDotsonNFL. With me is my excellent co-host, Tyler. You can find him on Twitter at HBombIDP. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.